Hey, Inspired Moneymaker. Today we're talking about investing, but not in stocks or bonds. Maggie invested her life savings to change the lives of hundreds of Nepalese women and children and was named CNN's 2015 Hero of the Year. Episode 241 features Maggie Doyne, philanthropist, mother, BlinkNow Foundation.
But I believe in philanthropy. I believe in the power and impact of every dollar. And I believe that there's a direct correlation to our world and finding more peace and more justice and more equality and just a thriving world and a thriving economy. It's better for everyone, for us included, when our weakest and our most vulnerable are cared for and fed and nurtured. To think that we can just draw a little circle around us and never be impacted and just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate wealth that we're not taking with us, by the way. We're all going to go. So I just believe in legacy. I think it's good for everyone when we find a way to give and to share and to make this world better.
I'm Andy Wong, host of the Inspired Money podcast and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. This episode is brought to you by Seeking Alpha. Seeking Alpha Premium is a subscription service that gets you everything you need to make smarter investing decisions. Whether you have a portfolio of stocks, ETFs, or mutual funds, Seeking Alpha Premium gives you expert market analysis, proprietary quant ratings, unlimited call transcripts and earnings calls, powerful stock screeners, and more. It's quick and easy to link your brokerage account. With Seeking Alpha quant ratings, author ratings, and Wall Street ratings, you'll immediately get a snapshot that tells you which stocks in your portfolio rank well or those that might require attention. Join over 200,000 subscribers today. I have a special for you too. Use the link inspiredmoney.fm/alpha for a 14-day trial. You'll get 50% off by buying the annual plan. It's $179.99, which works out to less than $15 a month. Now, let's get on to the show. I'm excited to sit down with Maggie Doyne in real life. We met in a park in New Jersey, which we had all to ourselves, and as the interview went on, more and more kids were coming to play, but it's all good. New York Times bestselling author of Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert said, "Where others look upon poverty and injustice and either turn their heads away or shut down in hopeless despair, Maggie gets to work saving lives, one child at a time. She is what I wish I could be, what I wish we all could be." Maggie's inspired money story is extraordinary. After visiting Nepal's poverty-stricken villages, Maggie took her entire $5,000 that she saved from babysitting to build a loving home for over 50 children, a school for over 400 young students, and a center for women of Surkhet. It's a blossoming community working to change the world by empowering Nepal's youth. The team at her nonprofit BlinkNow is 90% Nepali, 10% from the rest of the world, and 100% remarkable. I have so many questions after seeing her speak twice and reading her book, Between the Mountain and the Sky, a mother's story of love, loss, healing, and hope, now available in stores. In this episode, you'll learn about forging your own path versus doing what is expected of you, gap years and college tuitions, and make sure you tune in to the end to hear more about finding happiness through purpose. Now let's get inspired with Maggie Doyne. Maggie, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
My earliest memory, I remember being probably 3 or 4 years old, and there was one of those, like a big old milk jug. And I remember all of our change kind of going in there at the end of the day. We'd throw change or any money and coins you found in the couch. And then when I was 5, I remember doing my first lemonade stand and counting the quarters and the dollars at the end of the day and people leaving little tips. And yeah, I was definitely a lemonade stand kid. So.
You sound like you're pretty industrious, like babysitting, and you're a saver because you saved quite a bit of money. We know how it turns out. You've moved to Nepal. You've adopted I don't know what the number is.
Like,
54 kids?
yeah, let's just stop counting at some. After 50, you have to stop counting.
You built a home, you built a school. But initially, you were saving. What do you think you were going to use that money for?
So it was a value that was instilled in me by my parents. And I think they explained something about how you have to save your money in case of an emergency or to go to college, that you'd need it for a rainy day. And I took that word and I just lived by it. And I saved every bit of birthday money, every bit of lemonade stand money. I became a babysitter when I was 11 years old, as a mother's helper, and then a babysitter for $4 an hour. $4.25 was my first raise. And yeah, it was just kind of this distant future of college, and ultimately living on my own. But I didn't have an intention. I just remember my parents taking me to Commerce Bank, and which is now TD, I think.
Yep, it's now TD.
And creating a bank account, and I just took it so seriously. And I loved money, and I believed in its power, and I believed that it was something that you save. And I kept that bank account up until, when I was 19, and I ended up spending it all. Yeah.
I'm thinking that the dollars that you would have used in college, like say you save that money and then you go to college, now you have this money that you can use to buy beer, to buy pizza, maybe you buy a car. You used it very differently. Like the money that you use here, how is it different than money that you spend on the other side of the world?
Yeah, that was kind of the first realization about going to Nepal. You realize how far your money gets you. And I just remember being so inspired and shocked that $5 could put a kid into school or buy them a uniform and a backpack. And that became that first kind of moment on the riverbed. And then ultimately, we found a piece of land for sale, and it was $5,000, which is exactly what I'd saved up since I was a kid. And we knew we wanted a home base and a center for children. And that was the exact amount of money I had. And so that was my very first real estate investment, was a little patch of dirt in Surkhet, Nepal.
Did you feel like it was meant to be, that the dollar amount was perfect?
Yeah, there were a couple times that happened where I needed a certain amount, and then I looked and that was the amount that was there. Like in that first garage sale I did when I was trying to raise money for the septic tank and just get that money sent over. It was $2,700 that I needed, and at the garage sale we got $2,720. So yeah, maybe coincidence, maybe meant to be. I think you look for those moments too of just like the land's $5,000. That's what I have. I'm going to do it. So yeah, all the things.
Take us back to that time when you took the gap year and you're at the riverbed, because that seemed to be a pivotal moment for you, like a life-changing moment. It opened your eyes to a different world. Like the world looked different at that point.
It was definitely the moment that changed everything. And I was just watching children on a riverbed breaking rocks. And you see kids as young as toddlers and 5-year-olds breaking rocks. And it just, first I had a lot of questions. I was like, why are they breaking rocks all day, every day, all the time? And then there was definitely, I found out that they were breaking the rocks to sell them for about $1 to work. And there was definitely just this sadness that hit me, and this wake-up call, this realization that life can be really hard for a lot of children in a lot of places.
And it was personified, right? Was that Nima there?
Yeah. So that was Hema. And I kind of just locked eyes with her and felt a huge piece of myself. And it was easy to see the differences between the two of us just because of where we were born, the families we were born to, and the geography of, the upbringings that we had. Me, a kid from Mendham, New Jersey, and Hema, a kid from Nepal. So yeah, it was like this moment of realizing we're both the same, and that with just a little bit of investment, a little bit of opportunity, she had every chance in the world to do something. But she wasn't being invested in or believed in, or like she didn't have the support system around her to get an education. And that was a big wake up call for me.
We're sitting here in New Jersey today. Compare the two places for us, because even now, you split time between New Jersey and Nepal.
Yeah.
And when I read your book, I'm like, these are two probably totally different worlds. And as I'm reading, like going back in time, there was a financial crisis in 2008. When you were in Nepal, did you even think about financial crisis, which was global? Because you were like, there are totally different problems here.
Yeah, 2008 didn't, it was not on my radar at all. I was like, 20 years old, maybe, raising kids, just worried about water and electricity and having basic needs met. I didn't really understand philanthropy or nonprofit and the impacts of the global economy and what that meant. And we were just kind of chugging along, trying to make it month to month. And I was really focused on life in Nepal. Things in the media, especially at that time in the news, it was a different world too. It was kind of like on the edge of social media and smartphones. So it was still in the era where I had to go to an internet cafe and find an Ethernet cable and hook up to be connected to the world. And so as a young person at that time, I was just really into raising kids and being in Nepal, and I didn't have the greater perspective on anything really, other than what was right in front of me and living in Nepal. And yeah, navigating New Jersey and Nepal has been crazy. And it's these two alternate realities that I'm always grappling with and living with and trying to put words to. And sometimes there's just no way to do it. I think that's where I landed.
How do you deal with like stepping foot in New Jersey and it's a totally different world? And then just because the world is getting smaller, flying back to Nepal.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's so different. I would imagine that when you try to explain to people, sometimes it's not easy to explain so that they truly understand the differences.
Yeah, it's not easy to explain or to understand unless you've lived it and you've seen it and you've felt it. But the tastes are different, the smells are different, the experience, the air, the water, the culture, the language. It's just like landing on a different planet, I think. And it has been fun to live in these two realities over the last decade and compare the growth and, the watching the world get smaller, like watching cell phones come into Nepal and watching social media and TikTok take over this last it's been fun. And watching, I think, and figuring out a way to leverage all of these tools and kind of use them for good, and to use them as a tool for creating more opportunity and equality in the world, and believing that it can be a good tool.
I've never been to Nepal. Tell us like what it's like. There's civil war. Talk about the massive challenges that you recognized right away.
Yeah, so first there was a civil war. Following the civil war, there was an estimated 1 million orphan children. It's a country with very high unemployment, one of the lowest GDPs in the world. A lot of the economy relies on migrant work and migrant labor to the Middle East, to India. It has gotten hit with a lot of natural disasters, political instability. It's entirely Himalayan, so that brings challenges. It's landlocked. So all of these things, it's a food deficit region, really high maternal and child mortality rates. So it's been up against a lot as a country, as a culture. And I kind of got there in 2005, 2006, as the Civil War there was an armistice. It wasn't even coming to an end. So I've kind of gotten to watch the country and how it's evolved post-Civil War and navigating times of unrest. But yeah, it's a fair share of challenges for sure.
It seemed pretty early on that your mission was to build a home, not an orphanage,
Mm-hmm.
and to adopt kids. I feel like most people who are fortunate enough to travel and you see that there are kids in need, like that's not the first thing that pops to mind. I'm going to build a home and adopt 50 kids.
Yeah, yeah.
How did that idea form?
Well, I wanted to get to the source of the problem, and I didn't want to do scratch the surface type of support or Band-Aid solutions. And I wanted to support the kids who needed the most help. And the kids who needed the most help, we started by just enrolling kids into school because that's a really wonderful solution to crisis and to lack of opportunity. When a child receives just 2 to 3 years of primary school, their trajectories and their outcomes drastically change for the better. But then in working with that population of kids, we realized there was also this tier of kids who didn't have home support or a safe place to live or family, kids who'd lost everything. And so it was really to get to that group of kids, we realized we needed a home. Now, I didn't expect to become a mother and all of the other implications that would go with it. It was kind of just the next natural trajectory of what we needed to do to help the kids who needed it the most. And I'm really lucky that it turned out to be this like incredible family. But I think initially Tope and I, my co-founder and I, wanted to flip the orphanage narrative on the head. Orphanages are like these dark, awful, dismal places. And we wanted to create a home with joy and color and swings and music. And I don't know, I knew that I couldn't transport the childhood that I had here. I knew I couldn't bring New Jersey to Nepal. That would have never worked. But there were certain elements of a happy childhood, family, love, joy, that I felt like we could bring and integrate. And that's not any secret. Like when a child has a happy, loving childhood, they're going to have a happy, loving, productive life. So that's why we created the home. Just bright yellow, full of joy, full of food and nutrition and laughter and a big dinner table. And it's what I knew I could do with what I had. I knew how to give a childhood and create a home because that's what I came from.
Put in those terms, it sounds simple,
But
I know it's not.
I know. I thought it was simple in the beginning. And I mean, part of writing the book was so fun because it was going back in time and being like, oh, girl, you have no idea what's... I think it was a good combination of like youth and the like just hope and when you're young, you don't think of all the things that can hold you back, but also the right combination of I have to learn. And that learning mentality really helped me. The combination of both those, my age, you know, the stories that I'd seen, and then that I knew I needed to learn.
So there's a benefit to having that innocence.
I think so.
And kind of, pure innocence. You're looking at a problem with an innocence that is full of possibilities.
Exactly. Which is what, youth does. You kind of just have to temper it with reality and learning and more skill. And that's kind of the journey that I went on, was to get answers to the more complicated questions that were facing our world. Like I felt betrayed as a young person. Like, why are we accepting that this is okay? Why are we living in a world where kids don't have their basic human rights met? That's not okay. And then I kind of wanted to learn the whys and the hows.
You think a little bit of that comes from being the middle child? I have 3, right? My son's in the middle. And I feel like the middle child is always big on equity and fairness.
That's actually a really good point. I think so. I think, middle child syndrome is for real.
Well, I'm glad to see that you're using it for good and not for evil.
Exactly. Trying to.
So in this very different world on the other side of the earth, what commonalities do we have with the people of Nepal?
Oh, everything. I mean, I think everyone wants the same thing on this earth for the most part. Everyone wants love, acceptance, to be a part of something, to be seen, to be um, able to care for their families, to live in peace, access to opportunity. So many similarities. It was a culture of so many incredible things. I loved it there. I mean, it wasn't just that I moved to Nepal because there was so much need and desperation. I felt a real connection to the people and so much joy. I mean, that's everyone who goes to Nepal feels that. It's an incredible country. Um, and there was a real willingness from the local people and a wanting to get involved and wanting to change things and be a part of it all. So everyone had ideas, and we quickly formed like a whole coalition of local people who wanted to be in on this with us, which is a reason for the success as well.
I guess for context, share with us in dollar terms, what is the difference between a child who's suffering versus one who's thriving?
Good question. So let's take Hema as an example. She is, her mom was a widow. She had many brothers. She was the only daughter. Um, and a lot of times, 300 million children in the world are involved in child labor. And a lot of times that's because the family needs the income from the labor. So there's a cost to that. Um, so a lot of it is about getting people to see that if you invest at the right time in the child, that there's this longer term gain. But that's a lot harder to experience when you're a victim of poverty and you're hand to mouth and you don't have food on the table. So we're talking about the average child laborer is earning anywhere from $1 to $2 a day, sometimes less. On top of that, the cost to go to school, there's enrollment fees, a uniform, school lunch, and there's a baseline for that. We're talking $20, $30, but it goes up from there based on quality and what kind of interventions need to be made to keep that child safe and thriving in community. But yeah, minimal investment. So this isn't necessarily a money issue. It's an issue of values and us figuring out models and blueprints and politics to do better, right? And then invest in kids equally, and I think some wealth distribution issues and stuff like that. So yeah, for me, I think at that young of an age, I was just like, this is simple. Let's just enroll kids into school.
Well, that's a significant start, right? Because just that, well, even that's not that simple. It sounds simple. You could say it in a sentence. Let's send these kids to school.
Yeah, the barriers.
But what did it take to make that happen?
A lot. I mean, as I got into that journey, I realized, okay, how do you supplement that income from the labor?
For the families.
Mm-hmm. How do you convince the family? How do you make sure the child stays safe as they get older? And there's even more earning or say marriage potential for a 13 or a 14-year-old. So there were all these issues, domestic violence, addiction, you know, the families themselves, kids who were orphaned and needing, you know, more of an intervention than just like simple schooling. So it was through that learning that Kopila Valley and BlinkNow started to grow to address the whole community. And that's why when you look at our model, it's about slow organic change and addressing the issues of the whole child. And there's a piece of the model in the programming for everyone. There's a piece of programming that's for food support. There's our school, which is full service, community oriented with all of the things that a child needs to thrive. And then there's social workers to make sure that when interventions need to happen, they happen. There's counselors for when a child needs to heal from trauma. There's a women's center to prevent kids from becoming orphaned in the first place and really supporting women. And that's how we started to build the program, is through those learnings and seeing what children and families were up against.
How many staff do you have today?
Today, we are a team of about 120. And we run a sustainable farm. We run a school. We run 2 residential facilities, one for at-risk adolescent girls and one that's a home for orphan children. Did I say women's center? We run a health clinic. We run a sort of whole entire family development and counseling center. And we run BlinkNow Futures, which helps see our young people through transition into college and university. So we're a big team, and it's been fun to grow all these years. I think it's been 17 years since I first set foot in Nepal.
It's incredible. And I
Thank
think
you.
that you wrote about if you had a regret, one would be that you didn't start sooner. And it seemed like you did start pretty soon. I mean, you were
Yeah.
like 19 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, at that time, I wasn't raised with enough awareness about what was happening. At that time, growing up in Mendham, it was very insular. I wasn't asking the big questions. I wasn't understanding, you know, there was just this sense of like everything in the world was about either material wealth, what you were wearing, what car you got when you turned 17, what college you got into, what the size of your house. Like I wish I'd understood the level of privilege I'd been raised with. It kind of took me staring it in the face to really realize like, oh, what I came from was a whole lot of privilege.
Yeah, let's
But
talk about that privilege and sort of materialism. Like, do you think it's due to your travels that there was a shift in your thinking? That,
100%.
oh my gosh, I don't need the things that I thought I needed.
100%. I couldn't have come to that level of awareness without that experience of cultural immersion and seeing other people and other ways of being, and also making the decision that college and the brand of school you get into wasn't the end all be all. Like I need to kind of go out and find my purpose in a different way. Not that materialism isn't a driving force and shouldn't be used as a sense of motivation. It's not choosing one or the other. It's like just an awareness of, yeah, like we have a lot, and to that which a lot is given, a lot should be expected and required.
You wrote about when you first went to Nepal, almost feeling a sense of being ashamed for being well fed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was kind of just like, what were you complaining about? Like complaining about going to school and so sweet. Um, yeah, just when you have your most basic needs met, when you're not forced into marriage or labor as a child, I think it was just like, I have a duty and a responsibility to give back and to make sure that the next generation coming up after me has a chance, similar to what I had, and kind of handing over what I could for them. And I think today's generation they are raised with that. Um, and I had, like growing up, I would hear, you better eat all the food on your plate because there's starving children in the world.
My wife tells me that I'm not saving anybody by stuffing myself
I know.
and eating all the food on my plate.
I know. It's like there's this real disconnect between what you can do that's in front of you. And so, yeah, I just didn't understand my place in all of it. And yeah, there was a sense when you're looking at a riverbed and seeing a child who's 3 breaking rocks, the first thing that washes over you is shame, horror, like shock. Like you can't help but feel and questioning of our entire existence that this is okay. So yeah, I went through all of those ranges of emotion, I think.
You recognized your privilege and acted upon that in a way that most people do not.
It felt easy to me though. I was just like, it felt easier to stay there and try to be a part of a solution than to just like turn around and let those images haunt me for the rest of my life. Because I don't think I would have ever gotten over that and just been able to go back to college campus in North America, North American college culture, and, you know, pledge a sorority and get a degree and then get into college debt and then get a job and then hope to make, like, I felt I felt that I was called and inspired to do something and do it right then and there.
Can you talk a little bit about forging your own path versus what's expected of you? Was there pressure from your parents? I know that you asked for them to send you your $5,000 because you had work to do in Nepal. Was there any pushback? Like, Maggie, you got to come home. You got to go to school.
There was some questioning. And it was always like, I'd always pitch them like, oh, and then I'll come back and then I'll come back and go to
And I
school.
did notice that you wrote about that you're the least likely of your siblings to be in
hmm
Nepal.
It was unexpected for sure that I would stay. Uh, yeah, there was definitely a lot of questioning, a lot of conversation, but I was learning and I was passionate and I had like that fire in me. And my parents were wonderful, like that they didn't squash that. You know, they could have just said, no, you're coming back. But instead, they were a part of helping and supporting and guiding me through that journey. And I'm so grateful for that. And at that point, I mean, luckily they were a little, they were different in the way they raised us. They weren't those pressure cooker parents, like, you know, grilling us on where we were going to college. They were really good at teaching us how to think critically and question. Um, yeah, and the whole purpose of college is to help find your purpose and get you on that path. And I feel really grateful that I found that path and I found that sense of purpose and career and something that I wanted to dive into and that I was able to. So I was really lucky what happened and that they supported it too and said yes.
Given your experiences, do you recommend taking a gap year for most kids? And what do you think about college? Because tuitions are so high.
Yeah, I do recommend gap years for most people. It's not one size fits all. I do think that once you've had experience in the world, um, you are going to come back to the classroom and be more guided and directed and quicker. Sometimes you do find a 17-year-old that's like, I want to be this. I want to do this. This is my path. I'm going pre-med and then I'm going to, every now and again that happens. But for a lot of us, we're just like, I have no idea. I'm 17. How do I know? And then to go spend a luxury 70 grand, 80 grand, I mean, that puts you in deeper unless you have unlimited source of financing. But for me, I didn't. I was going to have to go take loans. I was going to have to find scholarships. Um, I think education is an incredible opportunity. It always will be. I'm pro education. I just think it can look differently for everyone. And there's a lot to be said for education in the world. And it's almost like we do it in the reverse. I feel like we should have a lot more of internships and training and job experience and real life experience and exposure for young people instead of expecting them to go spend all of this money. And it's actually, that's perpetuating inequality in this country, I think, because not everyone has the luxury of, you know, 70 grand a year tuition. So yeah, no, I think there needs to be a rethinking of the way we do college education and higher ed in this country for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier a little bit about redistribution of funds. So from your perspective, running a nonprofit where dollars can have such an amazing impact
Yeah.
because it takes less money to really lift people up.
Yeah.
It would seem like a $70,000 tuition is not a good allocation of capital. Like you could use
Unless
that.
you're going to go on and like solve some major issues in the Yeah, well, what do I think? I think that it, it's a case by case. If I just think a lot of college culture right now, we're dealing with mental illness and mental health issues. We're dealing with drug and alcohol. There's a reason that we're seeing the issues that we are amongst today's youth, and I don't think college is always the answer for everyone. Um, but I believe in philanthropy. I believe in the power and impact of every dollar. Um, and I believe that there's a direct correlation to our world and finding more peace and more justice and more equality and just a thriving world and a thriving economy. It's better for everyone, for us included, when our weakest and our most vulnerable are cared for and fed and nurtured. To think that we can just draw a little circle around us and never be impacted and just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate wealth that we're not taking with us, by the way. We're all going to go. So I just believe in legacy. I think it's good for everyone when we find a way to give and to share and to make this world better. So I'll always be preaching that. and to move away from the materialistic endeavors into a place of sharing and community and supporting our human family.
And it can't just start with one individual, right? Like, because you've built a women's center, a home, a school, it's expanded over time. But it really did start with one girl.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It can be really simple. And also, you don't have to go 8,000 miles away. There's opportunity to engage, to serve, to give back. Generosities. There's moments every day where we can look around us and do what we can to make the world better where we are. And for me, it was the riverbed. And today there's not a single child breaking rocks on that riverbed. I think we can all have those moments and begin to engage, get involved, find something that we're passionate about, find a way to create change in the world.
You've been sensitive to being an outsider who came in and not wanting to have westernizing Nepal was not the solution. Can you talk a little bit about how the culture, how important is it for you to be open to the culture, to learn the culture?
It's everything. In every book that I read about development, it was so clear that the solutions had to come from the people and the culture and the community itself, and that I was just one piece of that, and that progress came from a group of people working together collectively with shared values and then working towards goals. So it was good that I went in with that questioning, because that led me to a lot of learning and reading and studying of the issue and learning from the local people. And yeah, I was very sensitive from the beginning. I knew that I had to be careful, maybe too sensitive. I just wanted to blend in and immerse and learn the language. And then there was the whole book is about the series of learning that came from that, and the gray line between culture and change, and how do you bring about the changes you want to see with the local people.
Well, getting back to the college, 17 years in, 18 years in, you're seeing some of the kids
go to college,
came through your school, go to college. How does that feel?
Incredible. It feels like it works. Like that you can take a kid breaking rocks or begging at the bus station and then drop them off at one of the best universities or colleges in the world, and then watch them go on and get jobs and contribute, and that we're able to hire them back to come work for us. We have 166 graduates who have moved on to higher ed. So these things work, and it's fun. It's exciting. It's finally, raising kids. It's just a lot of hard work.
What I can't wrap my head around is that I think all parents, you're always looking at your kids and trying to figure out what are their interests. You're trying to guide them, right? And you're trying to envision what can they potentially become.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing that at over 50x.
Yeah.
And from a lower base, because when these kids started, there was very low expectations of them, and you saw different possibilities.
Yeah, it's been about creating, again, those programs and those systems and just raising kids. That's the nature of what you do and the questions you ask, and it's so much fun. I love it. And I love watching them become who they're going to be in the world. It's been a good chapter.
You say that you're not that good at fundraising.
In the book.
I beg to differ. I think you're really good at
Oh,
fundraising.
thanks. I think it's about just telling a story that's meaningful and connecting people to a cause. And I think we always had that going for us, that people could see and trust the change and the impact that was happening. But yeah, I'm good in my own ways. I'm good in my own ways. It's still a struggle. Like every day, day in, day out, no money, no mission. You know, you have to have investment and make do with what you have and make sure that it goes really far, which makes me good, I think, at what I do too. I see the impact of every dollar. Yeah, I'm good in my own way. It's still the hardest part about my job. I really struggle with just sleepless nights and anxiety about it. I mean, a lot of responsibility to have all these kids.
You've won a lot of awards, like CNN Heroes. I saw a Forbes Education Award. But you shy away from the idea of having a hero. You don't really want to be the hero in this story. You want to pass it on to the Nepali people to be empowering the Nepali children.
Yeah.
What does the future vision and dream look like? Do you know?
Yeah, I think I shy away from the hero narrative because like it's our responsibility to take care of each other. So if as soon as we put up someone else on a pedestal and call them a hero, it kind of I think we should all be doing this and engaging in this way. And the kids are getting what they deserve, you know, like, and it's also like the Nepali people around me who have been a part of it, and who have been working alongside me for 15 years. So I like to really try to find ways to uplift them and their stories and the kids themselves who are the actual heroes to overcome what they have. Our vision for the next decade is to make a blueprint of what we do and our work and share it in an open source way with others, and to export what we can and just create more change makers around the world and share our learnings and our model.
You speak to a lot of audiences, including kids. You like speaking to kids.
I love speaking to kids, yeah.
When you speak to kids, are you trying to change their definition of success away from materialism and inspire them to do something bigger and more impactful?
Yeah, because I think we're being tasked with a lot. This next generation is being handed a world that is broken and that needs a lot of us to come together and come up with innovative solutions and solve some major problems. And I think chasing the traditional form of success and material wealth isn't going to get us, it gets us greed, and it gets us unhappiness and discontent, and it's very self-serving. And I think that people are happier when we chase the other things. And I think in order for our humanity to survive and make it through these times and have a world with just more peace and less suffering, we're all going to do better when we can come together. Yeah. So I think we have to chase the things that can help rebuild our worlds and get us through these times. I don't want to live in a world with war and violence and a threat to our existence every corner we turn. And I know that this next generation doesn't either. So I think we need to change the narrative of what success is. Like, success does not equal material wealth. It just doesn't. Anyone who's successful will tell you that none of their most successful moments came from accumulation of like more stuff. It came from meaning and being a part of solution and helping make the world better. Everybody will tell you that, right?
Maggie, you've accomplished so much. How do you define success?
I think it's all about legacy and creating a better world for the human family, living with love, with kindness. For me, it's making the world better for children. That's what success looks like to me.
And you live in places that I think have very different priorities or can have different priorities. Has your definition of happiness changed over time?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think true happiness comes again back to the question of purpose, finding one's purpose. And ideally, you can find a purpose that creates good, creates change, where your existence doesn't take or detract away from anyone else's existence, and where we uphold and uplift each other.
I can't remember the phrase. Maybe you will. It was something to the effect that it's not about like running towards something, but it's standing for something. Mm-hmm. And I guess that goes back to the purpose. So everyone needs to find their purpose to
100%.
Find their happiness.
100%. I agree with that.
Well, thank you for sharing your stories with us and your amazing purpose. Tell the Inspired Money listeners and viewers where to follow you, learn more about your nonprofit, how they can help, and where to follow you.
Oh, thank you. Everyone can follow along at blinknow.org. And we're everywhere. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, the BlinkNow Foundation. And the book is called Between the Mountain and the Sky.
Yeah, get the book. Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? Maggie's dedication and purpose is so inspiring. I love what she said about the world being better for everyone when the weakest are taken care of. Imagine a world where we focus just a little bit more on helping people rather than accumulating more things. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment, please post a comment or share it in the Inspired Moneymakers Facebook group at inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Thank you for tuning in to the end. Be sure to subscribe to my email that goes out every 2 weeks. It's investment focused, and the Runnymede investment team highlights data, news, and events that we think are worth sharing. You can subscribe at inspiredmoney.fm/newsletter. It's free and informative. Thank you for joining me on this mission. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.